I can still feel the ridge of someone else's couch pressing between my shoulder blades, the threadbare seam scratching my skin every time I tried to breathe quietly enough not to wake my kids. Two little bodies, Lena with her hair snarled around her ear like a sleepy question mark, and Noah starfished over a pillow that smelled like someone else's laundry soap, were tucked into the narrow valley between me and the back cushions. Our world had shrunk to the width of a second-hand sofa in a stranger's living room in Dayton, Ohio, and the soft blue glow of a cable box clock that never belonged to us. I counted 2:17 a.m., 2:31, 2:52. The numbers changed. Nothing else did. When you're a mother without a key of your own, the night turns carnivorous. It eats the parts of you thought were permanent, the little rituals like turning off your own lamp, the certainty that your children's pajamas will smell like your detergent, that the floor creaks you know are harmless. You borrow a bed and the floor creaks become trials. The hallway shadows a cross-examination. Around us, the house we borrowed hummed with someone else's life, a refrigerator whose door gasket sighed like a bored witness, a wall heater clicking awake, the neighbor's late-night laughter sliding through the vent, as if even air preferred other addresses. There is nothing romantic about couch surfing. The word surfing suggests a horizon. What I had was upholstery. I stared at the ceiling and thought of our last real night at Maple Row Apartments, the night before the lockout. It wasn't a legal eviction, not with no court date, no marshal, just a changed deadbolt and a note scotch-taped at an angle that made my blood go cold. Due to non-payment? Non-payment of what? I'd paid. I have receipts the way other people have family photos, plastic-sleeved, chronological, creased in the corners from being handled like fragile proof that I existed. But proof doesn't always pry open doors. That day, Victor, property manager, landlord's cousin, wearer of cologne that smelled like cheap confidence, had smiled without his eyes and said, "You can always make this easy." He meant cash for silence. I meant to make it hard. The first couch we landed on belonged to Ray, the kind of friend who texts heart emojis at midnight and writes, "Mi casa es tu casa," with a flourish, but whose lease said, "No guest longer than 3 nights." We had 72 hours of grace in a pantry that looked at me like, "Don't you dare." Day 1, relief. Day 2, apology. Day 3, the calculation. Could we make it feel like day 1 again? Spoiler, you can't. So we moved. Tanya from my diner shift had a basement couch that smelled like dust and a dehumidifier that gargled to itself. Janelle from the school pickup line had a sectional patched with duct tape and kindness. A woman from church, Mrs. Whitaker, had a floral love seat that creaked like an old hymn whenever I exhaled. From sofa to sofa, we learned the grammar of other people's rooms, punctuating our days with thank yous and our nights with small, contained breaths. I invented a game for the kids. Detective noses. We'd guess each new house's smell. Cinnamon, bleach, old books, dog, paint, and I'd award imaginary medals for accuracy. It made the moving feel like a scavenger hunt instead of an unraveling. Lena kept asking, "When are we going back home?" Home sounded like a place you could fold into your purse like a receipt and present at a counter to claim what you're owed. I said, "Soon," the way you say it about rain in August or justice in America. You say it because it keeps the air moving. Some nights I let the rules slide, and we ate string cheese and crackers in bed, whisper laughing until the universe remembered it owed me noise complaints. Other nights I learned new sounds to fear. A key sliding into a lock that wasn't mine, footsteps pausing too long outside a door that wasn't ours, the exact click the cable box made before the TV turned on with a volume that betrayed where the last person left it. I kept my phone face down, the battery at 88% the way some people keep their coffee cup half full, just in case. The Notes app became my paralegal. Dates, times, who said what, who forgot to remember, photos of water stains and mold blooms, and that one text from Victor where he typed, "We can handle this without making it official," as if the smile could bleach the sentence. Noah woke once, crying for his dinosaur. "Rexy is at Grandma's," I whispered, though we both knew my mother's 1-bedroom in Lima had no room for us or dinosaurs. The truth, Rexy was behind the locked door of Maple Row, his plastic tail pressed between a laundry basket and the shape of our old life. I kissed Noah's forehead and whispered, "New mission. We'll find a new Rexy," and he fell back to sleep, believing me the way kids do, like Faith with freckles. I lay there, eyes gritty, breathing shallow, and felt a familiar heat rising. anger mixing with shame until it tasted like metal. I wasn't careless. I wasn't a party girl or a grifter. I worked 2 jobs. I packed lunches with triangles that lined up. I returned library books on time. I knew which buses ran late and which caseworkers answered their phones before 9. But the system doesn't care if you color inside the lines. It cares if you can afford a thicker crayon. And that night, with the soft snores of my children and the soft hum of someone else's refrigerator, I realized the line they expect mothers like me to toe is invisible, elastic, and policed by men who smell like cologne and loopholes. At 3:08 a.m., my phone lit up with a notification from a number I didn't recognize. A single sentence, no punctuation. You don't know what you're up against. I stared at it until my eyes watered, until the numbers melted, until the couch creaked as if someone else were settling beside me. Fear said, "Stop." Love said, "Document." I took a screenshot. Then, reaching for the throw blanket at the couch's arm, my fingers brushed a denim jacket wedged between the cushion and frame. Tanya's exes, forgotten in the migration of their own messy story. Something crinkled in the breast pocket. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Inside was a folded list scrawled in a blocky hand. Names, amounts, arrows that curved like a map leading somewhere ugly. I recognized 3 names from Maple Row, mine at the top, with numbers that matched our deposits and fees. And beneath it, a line that made the night become something else entirely. Cycle by 90 days. Keep quiet. I held the paper like it was a match, and suddenly the darkness wasn't a room. It was fuel. But if that list was the fuse, I still had no idea how fast the fire was already crawling toward us. I need you to hear this the way I needed someone to hear me in those weeks when the ground felt like stairs I was climbing in the dark. My name is Maya. I'm 34, a mother of 2, and until last winter I believed that if you worked hard enough, stacked shifts, clipped coupons, smiled when you wanted to scream, you could build a life the way you build a bookshelf, with instructions, patience, and the right screws. What I didn't know is that some landlords specialize in selling you a missing bag of hardware and then charging you for the wobble. We lived at Maple Row in the east end of Dayton, Ohio. Red brick boxes with postage stamp patios and parking lots that turned into lakes when it rained. Our unit had a front door that stuck in summer, and a back window that didn't quite forgive winter. I had a chore chart with blue markers for chores done and gold stars for kindnesses witnessed. Lena took those stars personally. Noah wore them as badges on his pajamas. Their father, Derek, had been gone for 9 months by then. Finding himself, a phrase that looks like freedom on Instagram and like unpaid rent in real life. He found himself in Cleveland, in someone else's selfies, and I found the light bill in my mailbox like clockwork. I learned to talk to the billing department like a hostage negotiator. What if I pay 40 now and 20 on Friday? No, I can't pay 75 today. Yes, I hear you. But do you hear me? The diner gave me morning shifts, and a cleaning company gave me nights. Houses where the bathtubs shone like they'd never known skin. Where I vacuumed rugs that cost more than my car. That was a good week. A bad week was when the diner cut hours because the owner's son needed to learn the ropes, and the cleaning company texted at 4 p.m. to say they overbooked. Poverty is never just arithmetic. It's choreography. You learn to dance around other people's missteps. Victor arrived the month after Derek left. New manager, new rules, same smile that didn't climb above the teeth. He called all the women sweetheart and all the men boss, and he added a maintenance fee for repairs that never materialized. When the roof leaked over the kids' room, he told me to put a towel down. When the heater coughed, he told me to buy space heaters and keep receipts, sweetheart. When the water smelled like pennies, he told me to run it until it cleared, as if patience were a filter. The first time I brought up the lease, he winked at me like we'd shared a joke I didn't remember telling. Then came the lockout. I came home from the morning shift with a bag of day-old muffins and 2 tired feet, and the lock took my key like a mouth refusing food. The note was a bad photocopy of legal language with my name as a fill-in-the-blank. I called. Straight to voicemail. I texted. "We can talk," he replied. "Cash only." My chest turned into a tight fist around a small bird. "I have kids," I wrote. "I'm not negotiating in parking lots." He replied with a smiley face and the word official, as if rules were a choose-your-own-adventure we could both enjoy. I called legal aid. I called the city inspector. I called everyone Ray's sister's cousin told me to call. Meanwhile, life continued in the disastrous way life does. PTA emails like I still had a PTA, a dentist appointment reminder, a flyer for a holiday community fair that felt like a punchline. Ray opened her door and her arms. 3 nights, she said, eyes apologetic. You know my lease. I nodded. We learned to make our lives fit inside a trunk. 2 backpacks, a grocery bag of food, a tote of toiletries, a Ziploc of paperwork, birth certificates, immunization records, school letters, and a zippered pouch of receipts that could narrate our lives to a judge. If you're watching me right now, I need you to do something tangible. Subscribe. Not because algorithms love me, they don't, but because stories like mine only survive if they are repeated, retweeted, retold. And tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Fort Wayne, Tulsa, Fresno, a motel in Amarillo, your cousin's spare room in Newark, because there's a secret census happening in this country, a count of mothers without keys, and we are undercounted. If you're in a living room that isn't yours right now, you are not a ghost. You are not a failure. You are a fact, and facts deserve witnesses. From Ray's couch, we moved to Tanya's basement, then to Janelle's sectional, then to Mrs. Whitaker's floral love seat. Each place taught me new etiquette, where to leave our shoes, whether to whisper after 9, how to fold a blanket to say thank you without saying we're settling in. I cooked dinners that didn't leave smells, eggs instead of onions, because I wanted to linger without leaving a trace. The kids learned to pack their specials. 1 toy, 1 book, 1 thing that makes you brave. We learned the bus routes between other people's addresses and our lives. School, my 2 jobs, the library where the computers were free and the heat was public. At the library, I printed the last 3 months of bank statements and took photos of the Maple Row door with my key half in, half out, a portrait of almost. I documented the stain that bloomed on the kids' bedroom ceiling, like a map of a country we weren't allowed to visit. I kept a log of every call I made and every call I didn't get back. I became a clerk of my own survival, stamping today's date on every scrap of proof. It felt like overkill until the morning a white sedan idled in front of the library, and a man I didn't recognize lowered his window and said, "You should let this go." I didn't, but that didn't mean the universe was going to reward me for persistence. At 6 a.m., on the 5th couch, there was a knock on the door that froze my blood in place. The kids stirred. The house was still. I opened it to 2 people with badges and clipboards and tired eyes. "We received a call," the woman said, her voice gentle and not gentle at all. "We need to ask you a few questions." And in that moment, I realized the list in my pocket wasn't the only piece of paper with my name on it making rounds in rooms I didn't have the address to. They asked if they could come in. I glanced behind me at the neat pile of backpacks, the folded blanket, the 2 sleeping faces, the borrowed living room that looked suddenly like a crime scene. "We can talk here," I said, stepping out and pulling the door close behind me, because the most dangerous thing in the world is a misunderstanding with witnesses. The woman's badge said Rivera, the man's said Jones. Their questions were the kind you know by heart if you've ever been poor in America. Are the kids in school? Are there enough beds? Do they have food? Do you have a plan? I answered like I was reciting a spell to open a door. Yes, 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 yes. I opened my notes app and showed them my log, my school emails, my screenshots of the lockout, my calls to legal aid. Officer Rivera's eyes softened. Officer Jones scribbled. "Someone reported concerns," she said. "We have to follow up." I nodded, a slow motion that felt like holding my head above water. Behind the door, Noah coughed. "May we see them?" she asked. I hesitated for the length of a heartbeat, then opened the door and watched them watch the soft, ordinary miracle of sleeping children. People always look different when they are sleeping. They look like a reason. They left with a list of resources that might as well have been a menu for a restaurant that closed at noon. Shelter wait lists, food pantry hours, the general intake line that never answered. "We'll check back," Rivera said, and I believed she meant it. I also knew that the person who made the call would sleep better that night. At the diner, I worked like war, hands moving, smile on, mind somewhere else. Tanya slipped me coffee and concern. "You okay?" she asked. Code for, "Are you about to break?" I almost told her about the list in the denim jacket pocket. Names, amounts, arrows that curved toward Victor's bank account like tributaries feeding a swamp. I knew 3 of the names. One of them, Janine, had cried to me in the laundry room when her late fee edged into, "We're giving your place to someone else." The handwriting looked like a man who never thought anyone would read him. I took a photo. I folded the paper back, and returned the jacket to its grave between cushion and frame, because borrowed couches deserve their own secrets. In the evenings, I cleaned houses with countertops that would have paid our rent if they were sold by the square foot. One night, the owner's teen son left his laptop open at the kitchen island, and my eye snagged on a tab labeled Landlord TikToks. A man in a backwards cap was explaining how to cycle tenants to maximize profit. Let them move in with discounts. Make repairs slow, stack fees, push them toward cash for keys, then raise the rent for the next one. Comments: genius. The hustle. Secure the bag. I laughed before I realized it was the kind of laugh that sounds like a bark. That algorithm wasn't built for mothers. The call from legal aid finally came through. A lawyer named Chen could see me Friday. Between now and then, the kids needed to get to school with hair that said, "We're okay," and I needed to not lose my job. I also needed a place to fold our bodies for 3 more nights. Janelle's mom had come home from the rehab center. Ray's landlord had noticed. Mrs. Whitaker, the church lady with the floral love seat, had a spare key and a smile that didn't suggest the favor was a down payment on something else. "You and the babies can stay a week," she said, her voice a quilt. "And Maya, I've got a thing for you." Her thing was a Singer sewing machine older than me, and 3 bolts of upholstery fabric the color of wet leaves. "You ever sewn?" she asked. I shook my head. She opened a photo album not of grandchildren but of furniture, before and afters of chairs rescued from alleys, sofas reborn. "I used to reupholster for a living," she said, and I realized how many lives women around me had lived without biographies. "You got small hands and hard eyes," she said, kindly. "That's the combo." I laughed. It sounded like relief. We set the machine on her dining table and fed it thread the way you feed a new cat, slowly, whispering to it like an apology. While the kids did homework, I learned how to fold corners and hide staples, how to iron the impatience out of fabric. That night, I slept on the floral love seat and dreamed of taking seams apart and making them stronger. In the morning, I woke with my cheek imprinted with petals and a plan budding where the panic had been. If I couldn't find a bed, I could build one. If they took our couches, I could make couches. The phrase arrived like a drumbeat, sofa to sofa. It felt like an insult turned into a map. Friday, I taped my notes into a skeleton of a case and took the bus to the legal clinic, where Attorney Chen listened like he was collecting raindrops in cupped hands. I showed him the lock, the note, the texts, the list from the denim jacket. His eyebrows rose. "Do you know where this came from?" he asked. "Tanya's couch," I said. "Her ex's jacket." He frowned, but not at me. "We'll need to authenticate," he said. "But the lockout alone is illegal. We can push for triple damages." Triple damages sounded like a magic trick. I have seen a magician pull a rabbit from a hat. I have never seen someone pull safety from a court. We set a hearing date. Chen told me to keep documenting. He told me to breathe. He did not promise me anything, which made me trust him. I went back to Mrs. Whitaker's house and stitched until midnight, my hands learning a new alphabet. At 12:03 a.m., my phone vibrated against the wood table. A text from a blocked number. "You're making noise." I took a screenshot. I told the air, "Good." The next day, I met Janine at the laundromat and showed her the list. Her face went white, then red, then something harder. "He took my deposit," she said. "Said I left mold. You saw the ceiling." I nodded. "I found 3 more names," I said. 2 of them left in under 3 months. Cycle by 90 days. Keep quiet. Janine's mouth became a straight line. "So let's get loud," she said. And suddenly I wasn't alone in the sentence. We formed a tiny war room at the library. Janine, me, and a blue plastic table that rocked under our elbows like a boat not meant for open sea. We wrote down dates, amounts, patterns. We printed screenshots. We found on the city website that Victor had been fined twice for improper notices, then had them waived after corrective action. Corrective action sounded like a brushed-on smile. The night before our hearing, we were at Tanya's when her boyfriend came home early, red-faced, mean-tired. "This ain't a shelter," he said, his voice a cheap threat. The couch, our couch, groaned under the kids as if making a point. We left fast, the way you leave when you know the script. No raised voices, no police, no escalation, just backpacks, 1 hand each, plastic bag of toothbrushes swinging like a metronome. Outside, the sky was the color of dishwater. I had $26 and a plan that suddenly looked like a paper boat in a storm. I tried 3 motels. Full, No vacancies for locals, which is a rule motels use when poverty looks like a mirror they don't want. The bus stop bench was wet. The library was closed. I put my back against the side of the grocery store and slid down until I was sitting on the cold concrete with a sleeping child on each thigh. And I thought, if there is a test, this is the part where you get to skip to the end if you can answer a riddle. The riddle was this: how do you make a home when all you have is a body? The answer: you turn your body into a roof. That's when a patrol car's headlights washed over us, and an officer got out. Slow, one hand raised like he was approaching a skittish animal. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked. Shame flared like a match. "We're fine," I said, which meant, "We're not fine. Please be kind." He looked at the kids. "There's a street outreach program," he said. "They can get you a motel voucher for 7 days. 7 days sounded like a feast. I nodded. He radioed. He didn't ask me why I was there. That silence is a form of mercy. They placed us at the Riverside Inn. 2 clean sheets, a carpet that smelled like stale air and resolution, a TV bolted to the dresser, and a door I could lock from the inside. I cried in the bathroom so the kids wouldn't see. Then I flushed the toilet to disguise the sound. Then I laughed at myself, because there was no reason to hide that we were human. I texted Chen our new address. I texted Janine, "We have a week. War room moves to room 214. She sent back a muscle emoji. Mrs. Whitaker texted, "I'm coming in the morning. Bring your thimble." I didn't have a thimble. I had the kind of stubborn that can substitute for a thimble if you protect it with spite. I put the kids to bed between clean sheets that belonged to no one and everyone, and I lay there and thought about the list, the hearing, the sewing machine, and the fact that every couch we had borrowed had taught me something I didn't know I needed: how to hold on when the cushion gives way. At 12:41 a.m., a new text: "You should have taken the cash." I stared at it with an anger hot enough to cauterize fear. I took a screenshot and whispered to the room, "You should have picked a quieter mother." But before the courthouse could hear me, the very couch beneath us was about to collapse, along with the last person I thought I could trust. Mrs. Whitaker arrived with a rolling suitcase that clacked over the motel's pocked asphalt like a metronome counting down. Inside, a heavy singer, an assortment of needles that looked like a medieval dentist's kit, upholstery tacks, webbing, and a courage that belonged to women who fix things because they have to. She set up shop between the bed and the window. "We're making this room earn its keep," she said, and the machine's motor purred like a cat that had finally found a lap. We started small, the motel chair with its split seam and defeated foam. Noah handed us tacks like offerings. Lena threaded needles with a concentration that made my heart ache. Mrs. Whitaker showed me how to stretch fabric across corners, how to staple in a diagonal so the pull distributes, how to pull back when the stretch looks right, but isn't. "Upholstery is like truth," she said. "Too tight, it tears. Too loose, it sags. You want firm and forgiving." By noon, the chair looked like it had nothing to be ashamed of. I took a photo and posted it to a local swap group. "Repairs done, $20. It sold in 40 minutes. A knock came at the door. A woman with tired eyes handed me cash like a benediction. "I got 3 more chairs like that," she said. "You fix, I pay." I called the business Sofa to Sofa, equal parts petty and prophecy. I made a free logo on my phone, a couch silhouette with a needle threading a heart. We took on small gigs: cushion covers, a love seat with a cigarette burn the shape of Ohio, kitchen chairs that wobbled until I learned to cross-brace them like arguments. The motel manager looked the other way as tools appeared and scraps of fabric were folded into our life. The kids started calling room 214 the workshop, and that word made me taller. Meanwhile, Chen prepared for court like a man sharpening a knife without whistling. We had photos of the lock, texts from Victor, statements from Janine and 2 other tenants who'd been cycled in under 90 days, and, most volatile, the list from the denim jacket. We couldn't prove provenance, but we could show pattern. The night before the hearing, Tanya texted, "I'm sorry." My stomach went cold. She confessed she'd given Victor a heads up that I was making noise because she thought he'd go easier on her boyfriend's late rent if she brokered peace. Betrayal doesn't always come from villains. Sometimes it's delivered by tired people juggling the same knives as you. I put my phone down. I looked at my sleeping kids. I picked my phone up again. "I hear you," I texted Tanya. "I still have to do this." Then I turned off notifications, because survival sometimes looks like airplane mode. The morning of court, the sky was a flat sheet. Mrs. Whitaker braided Lena's hair and kissed Noah's forehead. like it would grant him a permanent kindness. "Bring that spine we've been sewing," she said. I wore my best thrift store blazer and the kind of calm that's made of adrenaline and prayer. Chen met us on the courthouse steps, his tie askew in a way that made me trust him more. "Remember," he said, "you're not the one on trial." In the courtroom, Victor sat with his arms flung across the bench as if this were a lounge. He wore a new suit that didn't understand him yet. When the judge asked about the lockout, Victor's lawyer said words like miscommunication and temporary measure. I listened to the language bend. Then it was my turn. I stood. I spoke. I showed photos, read texts, handed over logs, and when my voice trembled, I imagined Mrs. Whitaker's needle pulling it taut and true. Chen slid the list across the table like a plain card with a loaded story. The judge frowned. "Where did this come from?" he asked. "A jacket left on a couch," I said. The handwriting matches other notes from the management office. Chen had pulled a maintenance slip from Maple Rose Public Records. The J's had the same petulant hook. Victor smirked. "This is ridiculous," he said, and in his mouth the words sounded like women. Chen didn't look at him. He looked at the judge and spoke about pattern and power, about illegal lockouts and triple damages, about how cycles don't happen by accident when the spin is profitable. Then, like a magic trick we'd practiced, he produced a printout of an email Victor had accidentally CC'd to Janine months earlier, an email to the property owner outlining a rent cycling strategy and how late fees and deposit forfeitures had improved margins. Victor blanched. The judge's face stilled. City Inspector Carroll, who I'd called 3 times and who'd never called me back, was sitting in the back. He stood and asked to speak. The judge allowed it. Carroll admitted Maple Row had compliance concerns. He admitted 2 fines had been waived. He looked tired in the way people look when they realize the paper trail they thought would stay flat now has depth. The judge recessed. I sat and counted the breaths between my hands. When he returned, the judge spoke like a man who knows the shape of harm. He ruled the lockout illegal, ordered Victor to pay triple damages on my deposit plus statutory penalties, and referred the rent cycling to the city's housing division for investigation. He looked at Victor and said, "Consider this a warning. These courts are not a personal ATM." The gavel ticked the air. It wasn't a fortune. It was a door. Outside, Janine hugged me so hard my ribs learned a new note. Chen shook my hand and for the first time smiled. "This isn't the end," he said. "But it's a beginning. The settlement would take weeks. The investigation would take months. The system moves like molasses unless it's moving over you. But for that 1 hour, the earth tilted our way. Back at the motel, there was a note slipped under our door. My chest tightened. I unfolded it expecting threat. Instead, it was a card from the housekeeping staff with 3 signatures and a $100 bill. "For the kids," it said. "For the couches." I pressed the bill to my heart and told the room thank you, which is to say, I told the universe thank you because sometimes it uses motels as messengers. Then the other shoe dropped. CPS, Rivera and Jones, returned, not with accusations, but with an update. They'd traced the anonymous call back to a number belonging to Ray, my friend with the first couch, the one with heart emojis. She told them she was concerned. Concern can be a dagger in a velvet sheath. My mouth went dry. I wanted to rage. I wanted to rewind. Instead, I breathed. "We're okay," Rivera said, eyes kind. "We'll close the file unless anything changes." After they left, I texted Ray. "You could have called me," I wrote. She replied 3 hours later. I was scared. And there it was, the knife we all hold, the one with fear for a handle. I put my phone down and held my kids instead. That night, with the motel's AC humming like a faraway ocean, Mrs. Whitaker and I pulled an abandoned love seat from the curb behind the building. Its bones were good. Its fabric was a lie. We stripped it, sanded its frame, webbed its seat. I stitched late into the dark, and with each pull of thread, I felt the universe re-seaming us. In the morning, I listed it on Marketplace. It sold in 2 hours for $120. I bought groceries without bargaining with myself. I bought Lena a second-hand denim jacket and told her to check the pockets for luck. We were not rich. We were not safe, but we had a plan that was heavier than the fear. We had a name that tasted like reclamation. We had a court paper with a judge's signature, and the promise of money that wouldn't fix everything but would fix something. I looked at the kids eating cereal on the edge of a bed that wasn't ours, and saw, for the first time in months, not the absence of a home, but the outline of one. And then there was another knock. Not Rivera, not Victor. a cluster of women from Mrs. Whitaker's church, arms full of fabric, tacks, and something brighter. We heard, they said. We sow, they said. We invest in our own, they said. I opened the door, not knowing that the next thing that would cross the threshold wasn't just help. It was a future wearing sensible shoes and carrying a microgrant. They called it a microgrant. To me, it looked like permission. $1,000 from a neighborhood fund called NeighborLift, decided by a committee of women who had survived enough to recognize a pilot light when they saw one. No red tape, the woman in the floral dress said. Just receipts and results. Receipts and results I could do. I had spent months becoming fluent in both. With the grant, I rented a storage unit that smelled like dust and blank pages. I bought a staple gun that didn't jam. Better webbing, quality foam, a bolt of fabric in a shade we named Daybreak. I put a deposit on a used minivan, with more miles than pride. The sign the kids painted on a scrap of plywood said, Sofa to Sofa, repairs, rescues, redesign. The R's backward at first until Lena decided she liked them that way. People will know kids live here, she said. Good, I said. Let them know what kind. I posted before and afters and watched as the comments shifted from, is this still available, to, I've got one too, to, my sister is a single mom, do you have a wait list? I started Saturday, rebuild nights with Mrs. Whitaker, a dozen mothers in a ring of chairs, swapping stories and staples, learning corner folds like origami with stakes. We charged what people could pay. Sometimes that was cash. Sometimes it was a casserole, or a flyer hung in a barber shop, or a referral that turned into a job. Currency is broader than banks admit. Janine came on as my first official hire. She has an eye for fabric and a laugh that makes the work lighter. We set aside one free project a month, the Compassion Couch, for a family with a caseworker's letter, or a story that needed somewhere soft to land. The settlement from court arrived in our mailbox at the P.O. shop, an unglamorous envelope that felt like a message from the version of me who refused to take the cash in a parking lot. Triple damages on my deposit, penalties, and a promise of a city investigation that, months later, would result in Maple Row paying fines and replacing Victor with a management company that at least spelled the word notice correctly. It didn't rewind anyone's nights on couches. It didn't resurrect lost deposits. But it did something. Sometimes something is the exact size of hope. The first couch I fully rebuilt for our own place was a hand-me-down with good bones. Solid oak frame, 8-way hand-tied springs. I steamed out the old smell and stretched Daybreak tight over new foam. On the underside of the frame, in a place only we would know to look, I wrote our names in Sharpie. Maya, Lena, Noah. I drew a small map of the bus routes that had carried us. I taped the grocery list we'd lived on during the motel week. I slid the folded denim list into a clear sleeve and taped it beside our names, not as a souvenir of harm, but as a receipt of what we refused to be. When we carried that couch into our new duplex, a 2-bedroom with a door that accepted my key like a handshake, I felt a seam inside me click into place. Our living room smells like lemon oil and popcorn. There's a plant in the corner that I keep forgetting to rotate. The kids do homework on a table that another mother traded me for 2 kitchen chairs and a promise that I would tell her if she was drinking too much coffee. Some nights, we still eat string cheese and crackers on the couch, lawless, whisper laughing until someone complains through the wall. It's fine, I whisper. We're home. They can know. I went back to the library, this time to print flyers for Sofa to Sofa's free repair workshop. Bring your broken, leave with better. I saw the same white sedan idling outside, and for a heartbeat my past rose up like a reflex. But it was just a man scrolling his phone, waiting for someone whose story I'll never know. I breathed. I walked past. The universe had shifted a degree. If you found me because you're on a couch that doesn't belong to you, because your lock changed when you were at work, because someone told you to make it easy, hear me. You are not a mistake in a system that works. You are the evidence that the system does exactly what it is designed to do. But evidence can be curated. We can document. We can sow. We can testify. We can take the word cycle and build a wheel we push ourselves towards something that doesn't depend on other people's generosity to be real. Subscribe, not for me, but for the mothers who will read your comment and realize they're part of a chorus they didn't know was singing. Tell me where you're watching from. Shreveport, Spokane, a library, a break room, the edge of someone's guest bed. If you have a spare couch, consider becoming someone's first stop, not their trap. If you have skills, share them on a Saturday. If you have money, fund a microgrant in your zip code. If you have power, write laws that remember what a lock can do. And if you have nothing but a listening heart, listen hard. It counts. We still measure our lives in sofas. The one we started on that scratched my back into wakefulness. The floral love seat that taught me to stitch. The motel chair that paid for groceries. The daybreak couch that holds our names on its hidden underside. From sofa to sofa, we did not drift. We built a bridge. On one side, fear. On the other, a workshop with needles that hum, and a daughter who checks jacket pockets for luck. This isn't a fairy tale. It's work with splinters. It's receipts and results. It's the way a door feels when it closes, and you know the lock will open for you again. It's forgiveness I am learning slowly for people like Ray, and boundaries I am learning quickly for men like Victor. It's a city that didn't save us but didn't stop us either. It's the knowledge that my kids now fall asleep to the sound of a sewing machine downstairs, and the certainty that the next knock on our door is probably a client, not a crisis. And the plot twist? The denim list that sparked this war is no longer my talisman. The new one is a handwritten sheet taped above my workbench. Names of mothers, not amounts. Arrows pointing to projects, not profits. Notes that say, deliver Thursday and bring extra staples. A different ledger, a different economy, a different map. Home, I learned, isn't 4 walls you win once. It's a promise you keep, stitch by stubborn stitch. And if you're still out there on someone else's couch tonight, take this promise with you. We will hold a corner while you pull.